So I wanted to do a quick post here today to give some updates on what's happening in foreclosure in Florida and in the Tampa Bay area in particular. Beginning in about mid-March, the floodgates on new foreclosure filings have really unleashed, and as we're looking all across the state, we're finding that, in fact, it's happening all across the state. The banks are in a fury now, filing foreclosure cases at a rate that's fairly unprecedented. Now, this is an expected, I suppose, outcome of the Attorney General sellout. Nobody really talked about that when the propaganda ministers of our federal government and our state governments were busy talking about the settlement agreement. Nobody explained to the general public that what this would result in is even more persecution of American taxpayers all across the country. So congratulate yourselves that your government, as a result of settling this agreement with the criminal banks, are now making foreclosures even more attractive for the banks to pursue and engage in. So on the one hand, we have a wave of new foreclosure filings. The banks, in fact, feel very much empowered that despite the fact of all the wrongdoing that's been documented, they feel like they can go forward with a fury again in foreclosure on people, on the one hand. Number two, the backlog of cases all across the state are becoming unclogged, and so we're getting a lot of action on cases that have languished since 2007, 2008, both with courts unilaterally setting these cases for trial, and then to a certain extent the plaintiffs, on the other hand, setting these cases for trial. Now, I've got a real problem with courts unilaterally deciding to set cases for trial. In our system of government, courts are supposed to be neutral arbiters of the facts and of the law. They call balls and strikes. They don't pitch the ball and they don't hit the ball. Their job is to sit there and swipe at whatever comes at them. The problem is our courts are reading the rules of judicial administration, which have some guidelines, and that's all they are, guidelines, which suggest that if a court system is properly funded, there's a certain amount of months that a civil case should take to proceed. Well, the problem is our courts are not properly funded at all. They are funded with less than 1% of the entire general budget, and as a result, they are not properly funded to do the job properly. And so I find it improper that, given that funding situation, courts are taking it upon themselves to set cases for trial, because it is not appropriate in a constitutional sense, because it puts the court in the position of being an advocate of one side or the other, and in this case they're tacitly becoming advocates for the plaintiffs. In the second sense, these cases just aren't ready for trial in many cases, and so they are unwittingly causing even more problems than they think they're solving by setting cases that aren't ready for trial. Having said that, when a case gets ready to go to trial, and many times it's going to be very difficult for the plaintiffs to win at trial. There are a number of good attorneys, particularly in this area, who do some really good trial work, and those trial experiences are being focused on in foreclosure cases. We're just very fortunate to be in the St. Petersburg area, in the 6th Judicial Circuit. You will find that the judges are exceedingly appropriate in virtually all cases. When you're a homeowner driving into a courtroom, I think that you will find judges who are respectful of homeowner and pro se litigants to the same degree that they are to attorneys, and that's frankly exactly the way that it should be. And so this circuit in particular is to be respected for that. Now, the bottom line, however, is that if all of these cases start getting set for trial, our court system just cannot handle them. Which brings up the more important point with all of this, and that is that it is an obligation and a duty on behalf of every American to be fighting these foreclosures. There are frankly far too many of them that go undefended. And we can sit back and complain about the Attorney General settlement or what the federal government's doing, or the state government, any political leaders, or anything else. But the fact of the matter is, if you're not fighting your own individual foreclosure case, hopefully with an attorney that knows what they're doing, but even if you can't afford an attorney, by yourself, the fact of the matter is, if you're not fighting a foreclosure case, you're not doing your job as an American. You're not sticking up for yourself, and that's a problem. Look, when a summons is issued, and when you're handed a summons, I know that's a difficult and anxiety-provoking thing, but the fact of the matter is that summons is an invitation for you, your own personal invitation to come and get to know your court system, and you should be encouraged to come into the courts because you own the courtrooms, and particularly here in Pinellas County, where the judges and their staff are open and receptive. The general public needs to be going into the courtroom and seeing what it is, the burden that's been dumped upon our court system, and how the banks are making such a mockery and a desecration of our court system. I would largely say that across the state this should happen as well. The people own the court systems, and our judges largely recognize this. And the more we as the people get behind judges and support the work that they're doing in respectful and appropriate manner, I think the better off we will all be. We should not allow our courts to just walk and work in anonymity. We should be there supporting our judges and our staff that do good work for the people of the state of Florida. We need to understand, and I think the general public is recognizing now, that this is not an issue of the borrowers against the country. This issue, this entire crisis, is the banks and institutions versus the American people. And we need to be doing more and more every day to get our judges, our clerk, and other attorneys to recognize this fact, that this is frankly the American people versus the banks and institutions. And if we stand together and fight together in appropriate and respectful ways, I think we'll start to have some successes where in the past we've kind of gotten kicked around a little bit. So stand up and fight for your own foreclosure. If you get served, hire competent counsel who knows what they're doing. If you've been languishing in a foreclosure case for years with nothing happening, be very careful now, because these cases are being set for trial. And if yours gets set for trial and you don't have counsel, in all likelihood you will lose. So you do need appropriate counsel to represent you.